Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by the South Carolina Farm Bureau, online at scfb.org, and by the Columbia Metropolitan Airport, online at columbiaairport.com, and by Time Warner Cable, online at timewarnercable.com.
And welcome back to This Week in the State House. As this session of the General Assembly continues to move forward, the budget for the state continues in the Senate Finance Committee. Over in the House, they will be taking another week off. They're busy clearing the legislative deck, so to speak. A lot of elections to the Public Service Commission, college and university boards this week, those sorts of issues. The question of a background check for people who have been committed to mental institutions. That bill cleared the Senate. It was a House bill, goes back to the House for consideration. So those things have been occurring. What are we going to talk about this week? An issue here at the State House and important to all South Carolinians. Roads, conditions, funding. Why is that an issue this year in the General Assembly? Will it be solved this year? Will it go future years? But first, before we introduce our guest and go to those subjects, a few things. We want to, of course, thank the South Carolina Educational Television Network for the production of this broadcast. But we also want to thank our sponsors, Time Warner Cable, the Columbia Metropolitan Airport, and the South Carolina Farm Bureau for assisting in this broadcast by sponsoring and allowing us to bring these issues to you. And I also want to thank the South Carolina Press Association for their assistance in us getting this broadcast together and making everything work. And our friends in 518 of the Block Building, of course, I do want to tell them we always appreciate them tuning into this, Zachary and Associates and the other groups who find the topics we bring on here very enlightening. And with that, let me introduce you to our guest. Representative B.R. Skelton comes to us from Pickens. I believe you represent, all your district is in Pickens. Completely.
It is in Pickens County, yes. The Clemson Central 6 Mile Norris area.
All right, and then we have Senator Ray Cleary comes to us. They're calling the senator from Georgetown, but I think you in Horry, Georgetown, and Charleston, correct?
Correct, Governor.
All right. These two gentlemen are active in the issue of roads, and that's why I have them here. So I'm going to start with you, Representative. They say our roads are in bad shape, and that this is a real issue facing South Carolina. Are they in bad shape, and why are they in bad shape?
Well, in my opinion, they are in terrible shape. In fact, the chairman of DOT has indicated that the best he can do is manage the decline in the roads. I have a bridge that has collapsed in my district and has been out of service for several months, and it's going to be several months before. I keep getting reports from people, the loggers, having to detour around because bridges are out. It's a serious, serious problem, and we haven't had an increase in the motor vehicle user fuel since 1987, and during that period of time, the costs of everything have gone up, and we just have a serious problem.
So you're telling me we had a fixed revenue. It didn't float with the price of gas.
That's correct.
And the price of fixing and maintaining these roads has been going up, but not the revenue. Is that what I'm to draw out of your comment?
That's exactly correct. In fact, we're trying to maintain about the fourth largest number of miles in the United States, and that's primarily because Texas and some large states have more roads to maintain, but we're trying to do it with about the lowest gasoline tax, and it's just impossible to do that on a continuing basis.
And I heard you say logging trucks and a bridge out. When this infrastructure fails, is this infrastructure important to the economy of this state, to the mobility of this state? Because
Well,
it sounds like to me you have some firsthand experience here.
there are two essential variables, I think, that are going to long-term impact the economic development of the state of South Carolina. One is our infrastructure, which is sorely lacking, and the other is education, which we have some problems with. And we need to correct both of those problems if we're going to maintain the economic development that we're going to need to generate the tax revenue that we need to do the things that government is required to do.
Senator, let me ask you, you come from a tourist-oriented area, transportation, infrastructure, critically important. Are our roads in bad shape, and how are they important to the economy of your area?
Well, Governor, I'm chairman of a committee, and as you can see, and it's kind of scary, 47% of our primary highway system in South Carolina is in poor condition. Not fair condition, poor condition. And if you think that's bad, if you go to our secondary road system, 53% of our secondary road systems are in poor condition. And as Mr. Skelton said, bridges, we have 1,650 bridges in this state that are considered substandard. I don't want a school bus to go over one of those and find out it is substandard. I know they had problems in Minnesota. But the problem is that in most states, only 30% of the DOT monies come from fuel tax, fuel indexing. In South Carolina, it's 90%. But here's the important thing. As a dentist, I always tell people, you're going to either pay me now or pay me later. I can either do the filling now, or you can spend twice as much or 5 times more with the root treatment. To keep a road healthy is about $19,000. To fix a boat, to rehabilitate a road, that same mile is 122,000 miles, and if we let it collapse, it's 193,000 miles. I would much rather fix our roads when it's only 19,000 miles, $19,000 per mile, than to let them collapse and go from fair to poor to just unpassable and have to spend 10 times that amount to get them up to where they need to be.
All right, so let me ask both of you, if we got all of these needs out there to repair these roads, how about the widening of roads? We got interstates in this state that were designed in the 1950s and 60s and built. They've been widened some in some congested areas. But by and large, the traffic out there is almost clogging now the interstates. Where's the money going to come from to widen roads if you're telling me that the roads are in this, that we don't even have the money to maintain what we got?
Well, the task force that looked into the infrastructure part of it, expanding the infrastructure, says we need $6 billion over the next 10 years. DOT has said we need $29 billion additional money over the next 20 years. We can't generate that kind of money with little Band-Aids that are being proposed right now. We're going to have to take some drastic action. And the fact of the matter is, and unfortunately I have a habit of telling the truth, and the people I think can accept the truth out here, we can't take the money out of the general revenue budget and fund our roads to the extent they're going to have to be funded. The fact of the matter is, the only way we can do that is to increase the user fee, raise some fees on registration, raise the license fee, I don't know, even put a sales tax on motor fuel. Those are the things that we're going to have to take on if we're going to solve the problem. And I hesitate to say this, but those people who think that we can take money out of the general revenue stream to fund our roads and not impact the necessary services that government has to provide are delusional.
Well, I want to go into that a little bit deeper. Before I do, let me make sure our viewers understand. The studies that have been done, what is the total amount that will be needed to repair our roads and meet the future?
The state, as Mr. Skelton said, needs $27 billion in the next billion is with the B in the next 20 years to be where they need to be and get just the roads that are existing. But you know, we got a 7th congressional seat this year, so we know we've got more population. And not only that, our cars are using less and less gas. Now, I think what confuses a lot of our citizens is they kind of lump us in with the Washington legislators. I will say this, and as a state legislature, I'm proud of the fact that we have a AAA credit rating. I'm proud of the fact that we balance our budget every year. But what they may not know is that 15 years ago, we supplied 70% of Clemson's revenue. Now we only give Clemson 10% of the revenues. Coastal Carolina only gets 7% from the state for the revenues. We've got issues with mental health. We've got issues with education. We've got a lot of issues there. And to say that we're going to put every dime into the roads, even if we did, we couldn't meet their needs. DOT needs $100 million per year just to resurface, just to stay current. $100 million per year.
Of new money?
Of just to resurface.
All right, and so for the viewers out there that want the interstates widened and improvements made to the roads just beside maintain them, how much more money will that take?
One interstate in Greenville that they want to do an exchange on is $233 million to fix it. $233 million for one interchange. Now, what we also do, and we'll give DOT credit, there's federal money out there. So sometimes if we put 20% in, we get 80%. So sometimes that's why you may see a new road so that we can get as much money as we can from the federal government and try to meet some of the future needs and some of the current needs. But it's a balancing act. And DOT has done a good job, but as Mr. Skelton said, they can't do it forever. They need help.
I want to ask you one other question before I go to these fundings and find out what you all are struggling with. For the viewers out there, I-26 to widen it to 3 lanes, I-20 to widen to 3 lanes, I-85 to widen to 3 lanes, I-95 to widen to 3 lanes. What kind of money are we talking about?
I don't know.
I will tell you that we're just trying to meet the needs right at this stage. You know, it's kind of like this is what I need, not what I want.
Right.
And what DOT is asking is what they need. And I'll give you an interesting comparison. The fire station down where I live wanted to increase their millage by 2 to 3 mills, and everybody said, oh, tax increase, we can't do it. When we had the meeting, we found out that a 2 mil increase for a $200,000 home was $20. If they lost their ISO rating and it went up, everybody would be paying 4 times that much in insurance, except the commercial properties that would be paying 12 times that much. So sometimes fees are good. Sometimes fees are necessary, but at this point in time, what we're struggling with in the legislature is to just try to meet current needs, get our roads and bridges out of substandard and poor, and at least get them to where they're passable.
You're heading up a committee, is my understanding, a subcommittee looking at the question of funding. And Representative Skelton has said, look, the general fund doesn't have a surplus of money to do this. Do you agree with that assessment and what y'all have looked at? Or, I mean, that's what I'm asking. Some people have said, you know, the general fund. But it sounds like to me y'all are talking about a lot of money per year. Well,
you know, if we had $300 million in surplus, I think this year there may be $500 million more, but remember annualizations and things like that take some of that away. But even if it was the tune of $300 or $400 million, that doesn't meet the needs of DOT. We have to create outside revenue sources, and that's what every other state's doing. And our state needs to, you know, buckle up and do it. Otherwise, we're even further behind the 8 ball.
You agree with that?
It's going to take political courage. It's going to take leadership. If some of the leadership would take a position that we need to raise the motor vehicle fuel fee, let me just give you an example. A 10-cent increase in the motor vehicle user fee would generate about $330 million. If you look at the amount of fuel consumed based on the number of registered vehicles and the consumption, the average vehicle consumes 530 gallons of fuel a year. That would cost $53 a year, $1 a week. If you ask anybody out there in the general public, would you pay $1 a week to help fix our roads and bridges? Very few people would resist that. But we're reluctant to do it because we have we have some ideological views that prohibit us facing the problem instead of, to use a worn-out term, kicking the can down the road and pushing it on other generations. And we just can't do that. We're going to have to face up the fact that the only way we're going to be able to correct our problem with the deficiency in our roads is to not only increase the motor vehicle user fee, we're also going to have to raise some other fees as well to generate the kind of money that's needed. And unless we get the political courage to do that, then we're just going to continue to squander our opportunities.
Senator, your subcommittee, he says there are other fees, there are other things that looked at, and he's made a real profound statement about it. The revenue's got to come. What are some of the things that y'all are? Are y'all looking at some other fees?
We are, but I will say this, that our committee, I think, will have a proposal on the table on Tuesday with no tax increases, none at all. Now, what's interesting is I brought this book. I happened to get it just by, it's called Tax Watch, Freedom from the Tax Burden. Because, you know, some people sign tax pledges and things like that. And then the question on this page is it a tax or a fee? And it says that if the charge's primary purpose is to recoup providing a service to the payer, then it's not a tax, it's a fee. And what we're looking at is fees because what we're doing is providing a service that the individual can't provide himself, which is roads. Now, my position is you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. I give credit for the state paper because they've been there, and the front page says, we're going to create a tax. I look at that as part of the problem. What they have to look at is, and they tell us that while we're charging 16.7 cents, North Carolina's 38%, 38 cents a gallon, Georgia's 29 cents a gallon, and we haven't changed ours since 1986. But the representative is right. You have to have political courage. Honestly, I want to thank my constituents because they sent me up here to make a difference, not to sit in a chair. And I am going to try to make a difference for my people back home so that they can get the roads they need on, because if they don't, they will pay more in car repairs than they ever pay in fees. And even with the motor use fee, 30% of that money is paid by non-residents of this state. So even that, if we indexed it, we're not going to raise the gas tax, but if we indexed it, if we created some other things, we charge $2.37 for a driver's license per year, the lowest in the Southeast. And we can go on and on of how we're the lowest in the Southeast. We have to look at different revenue streams. We have to look at diversification for revenue. Because remember, when more cars are hybrids, when they're getting 36 miles a gallon, or they may not even be, they may be using electricity, who pays for our roads then? One of the big complaints that we have about Washington is they're putting burdens on our children. Well, if we don't fix the roads in South Carolina, are we not doing the same thing?
You know, I talk to groups about leadership and always tell them one thing about leadership is you need to tell people what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, and you also have to tell them things they're not going to like to hear. And that's what I'm hearing from the two of you, that they need to know we don't have the money to fix the roads, and we need to square up with the public and tell them that. And you're telling me if we take the money out of the general fund funds what?
Well, it funds every agency in this K-12, higher education, health and human services. Every agency is funded, and we can't even meet the demands we have now that we need, particularly for one of your favorites, the adult population in this state.
That's correct.
And so, when we're saying we're going to take money out of the general fund, we're saying that those priorities are not important. We're just not going to meet those priorities, and I think that's the user pays concept is what we ought to be following. Who's using the roads? Tourists, truckers, and the people who ride around. For water and sewer, who pays for it? The user pays for it. This is a perfect example of where user pays is the primary, should be the primary source of revenue. But I understand that people have signed no tax pledges. The bill that imposes a fee calls it a user fee. We can call it a tax if you want to, but every time we pass a budget, there's a fee increase, and those people who have signed no tax pledges have raised fees, which means they've raised taxes. I took an oath to do what's best for the people and the state of South Carolina. for me to live up to that oath, I have to address the problem of the roads. And that problem can only be resolved by charging a higher user fee for those people who are using our roads, together with maybe registration fees based on mileage or things of that sort.
So your committee, you think you're going to have a report?
We will have a report, and we will have a bill that we will submit to the full Finance Committee Tuesday afternoon, and hopefully the Finance Committee will look favorably on it. And I think that with that bill, that we can at least initially get about $2 billion into the system to at least fix some of these bridges and some of these hot spots that we have to fix.
Well, the statistics I had, and you'll correct me, it said that 20 years South Carolina's projected to have close to $50 billion in road and bridge needs. South Carolina's only projected to have $19 billion to pay, leaving a massive deficit to overcome. So what I'm hearing is, even if you get everything you want, it still isn't going to fix it, is it? But it's going to be a leap forward.
And you know, one thing I have to give my committee credit for is the first thing when we met, and Senator Leatherman put me in charge of it, I said, are we trying to create a Band-Aid, or are we trying to make a difference? And that committee said, we want to make a difference. We know we can't fix everything, but I think this will be the first step if we can get it through the legislature. And because we view it as a fee, we view that nobody will be, everybody in there clinically, even the governor, can support it. Because I think at the end of 10 years, 20 years down the road, and we look at our tenure in the service in the House and Senate as a governor, you know, I think with pride you'd look back at it. I think when you look at the achievements of Governor Campbell, who's looked at as one of the best governors, he did a lot of this. And I think we allow them to move forward with this, but we'll see, as Mr. Skelton said, do we have the political courage to do that? But none of my committee wanted a Band-Aid. We wanted to take the first step, and quite honestly, we think there's got to be a second step.
Well, how about, let me ask both of you, there's a proposal floating around and there's been some debate. Some folks are saying we need to go out and borrow, have a bond issue and borrow money to fix the roads. So if we borrow it, is that a good idea? And number two, if we do, where's the money coming from to pay the bonds?
I think it is, when the two things you have to realize when you borrow money is it's borrowed money and you have to pay it back. So you've got to create a revenue stream for it. And taxes are not a revenue stream. Fees are. So, for example, if we were to borrow money, and if we borrowed, if we took, $80 million from the tax on cars and we made it a vehicle registration fee. If we put it in the SIB, they can go outside the government and they can borrow 10 to 1 on it. So they can put $800 million into the system to help jumpstart the system. And as long as we keep that as a revenue source over the next 10 to 12 years, it will pay off those bonds. And right now, interest is about as low as you can get. So it's not a bad idea to bond it, but you got to create the revenue streams to pay off the bonds. And that's what Dr. Skelton and I are talking about. Just to borrow money without knowing how you're going to pay it, you have to create independent revenue streams to do that. And we can't rob from Peter to pay Paul. We can't rob from the education fund. We can't rob from these other funds. We can't rob from mental health or any of these other issues. And we can't steal anymore from the universities. We've got to find revenue streams. And if they're good revenue streams, I don't think we have a problem bonding, especially at the rates they are. We get a little bit more bang for the buck and we can fix roads at a cheaper price. But the key in that is creating the revenue stream to pay off the bond.
Representative. I'm not too fond of borrowing money to fix our roads. I know that we do float bonds out of the revenue source for the infrastructure bank to handle that situation. The reason I'm not fond of it, even though I think there's never been a better time to float a bond issue with respect to interest rates, because they're just rock bottom low, and I just don't want to jeopardize the possibility in the future that we're going to need money for other bonding. I know these would be revenue bonds, but I'm not fond of that when there is a simple source of the money, and that is charge those people that are using the roads to use them. Well,
We're quickly running out of time, as we always do in these broadcasts. Very quickly from both of you, I know there's been this proposal to get $100 million in this budget, and I think only 30 million, is it true that only 30 million of that is recurring revenue for this year? I mean, if you transfer the car sales tax, that's about $30 million. Where's that other 70? Is that just one-time surplus money?
The $300 fee on vehicles generates about $100 million. 20 million of that goes to K-12. And so the House bill this year would defer 40 million, half of that for roads, and next year all 80 million of it for roads.
All right. You agree with those?
I agree. And the one thing I will echo with the representative is, you know, you have to be careful when you start bonding that you put everything in there. So in our committee's proposal, we're gonna create a capital, and this is what the state treasurer has recommended, and several finance people, is we're also going to create, by proviso and otherwise, a capital improvements act, so we can look at the needs of the entire state, not only roads, education, et cetera, so that we just don't bond indiscriminately, but that we have a purpose and a method behind when we do, how we do, where we do. But the other thing, and I agree with him, and I think the House was right on this, is if all of a sudden you put 80 million into the system, and let's say you bond it with a restricted SIB account, which is State Infrastructure Bank account, because they do like 10 to 1. The catch there is that we will dictate how they can spend it, but more importantly, if you do something like that, you can't release all of that at one time. It would drive costs up and everything else. And so I think it's a good thing to do over time, you know, 40 this year, 40 next year. We also are getting out of the school bonds that we got into, and that frees up a little bit more of general obligation bonds. But ultimately, the only answer only gets served if we find additional revenue.
So let me ask you, we got about 1 minute left of this broadcast, so very quickly I'll go to each of you. Do you think any proposals to fix our roads will get traction in the remainder of this session of the General Assembly?
I don't think in the House anything. I had a bill that got adjourned debate on that would have imposed an increase in user fee. I don't think anything other than the one that came over from the House on the sales tax on motor vehicles is going to get any traction in the House.
Your prediction in the Senate?
I believe that the Senate will have a fight, and that hopefully we will win that fight, and that fight will be given to the House, and then the governor will have to make a decision.
Well, we got to make a decision, and that is to wind up this broadcast because we're out of time. We thank you for tuning in. We'll be back with other issues here this week in the State House.
Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by the South Carolina Farm Bureau, online at scfb.org. And by the Columbia Metropolitan Airport, online at columbiaairport.com. And by Time Warner Cable, online at timewarnercable.com.